Hello, and today we're going to learn about pollinator gardens. And yes, I'm going to go off a script. So we want to learn a little bit more about pollinator gardens. I'm not sure if you've heard about them. They are gaining a lot more popularity nowadays. And I'm here with Heather Bradley, and this is her pollinator garden. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So Heather, can you tell us what inspired you to set up this garden?
Sure. So I've been here about 5 years, and I love animals. I love the environment. I care about the environment. And, I think I had mowed over my last frog and decided there's got to be a better use for this sunny spot. And I got some books and just learned a lot with various books, and trucked in about 12 yards of compost and spread it out. And then bought some native plugs, and started planting those. And then this is just, it's only a year old. It's a year old. Last May, May 28th is when 2020 is when I planted it. So, it really does a lot on its own, and it's very little upkeep. So it's great. I don't have to mow anymore. I don't have to water it. No fertilizers needed. So. Okay,
excellent. All right, well, let's take a walk around, okay. And if you want to just point out some of the different flowers that you planted,
sure.
So that way people can kind of put I'll say the plant version of face to the name.
Sure. Okay.
All right, so we'll start with these purple flowers right here.
Sure. So this is Asclepias Incarnata. Its common name is swamp milkweed or rose milkweed. You can actually see there are some monarch caterpillars that are right underneath there. Looks like there's 3 of them in there. Can you see those?
Yep.
And this is the only thing that monarch caterpillars can eat. If they can't live on anything else, only Asclepias or milkweed. So this is one type. There are several types of milkweeds, but this is a real pretty one for a garden.
Okay. And it looks like the flying pandas, also known as bumblebees, yeah. are really liking it as well.
They're a really important bee here in Connecticut, and they love lots of things come to this, not just monarch butterflies. And they don't sting. A lot of people say, well, I don't want a pollinator garden because I don't want to get stung by a bee. They're not wasps. These bees don't sting unless you were actively trying to attack them, or they're young, so they won't sting people. Some of the other milkweeds, this orange one is called butterfly weed or Asclepias tuberosa. That also is something that the monarchs use, and one of the things now it's so important to plant for monarchs is because we've lost, I think, about 90% of the monarch population over the past few decades. So unless we have milkweed, we won't have monarchs. So we've lost them due to pesticide use, a loss of habitat. So instead of your lawn, plant some milkweed. So you want to go this way?
Sure, that looks familiar. I think I might have that in my yard as well.
This is mountain mint, Pigmanthemum pilosum, and this is a bee magnet, a butterfly magnet. The pollinators love this, and it has a really nice smell if you brush up against it. It is pretty vigorous, so if you have just a small garden, you might not want this one because it does, this is just 1 year and maybe 20 plugs of it, and it's just, you have to cut this back every few years or share it.
Okay.
So
that's one that you'd prune, you'd prune it back a little bit
if you want
just to maintain
it.
Okay.
I haven't yet.
Ooh, look at that guy.
Yeah, these are coneflowers, Echinacea. There's some pollinator there. The deer tend to like these. Sometimes I see that they're not untouched in other yards, but sometimes the deer come in when they're really young and eat them. One of the solutions for that is a motion-activated sprinkler I have. So that keeps the deer away and protects your investment here with your plants. This is a New Jersey tea. This is a Ceanothus, it's called, and that's it'll be maybe about 4 feet, and then the bees love it, as you can see, and the butterflies as well. This is a yarrow plant, another pollinator plant, native. This is actually a cultivar. So most yarrow is a white color, but that's obviously not.
Okay. And when we use the term native, that means there are plants that are normally found in our area. So we're in southern Connecticut, so these are plants that you could find anywhere in in nature. They were not imported in, is that correct?
Right. For the most part, they were here before colonists came. So they were here when the indigenous people were here. And, you know, the cultivars, some people are just don't want any cultivars. They just want the straight species, but I like a combination. I just encourage people, even if you want something that's not native, maybe you really love roses that aren't native, have those, but have maybe 30% non-native and 70% native, and you're doing a favor for the pollinators, the ecosystem.
Okay. What's this one here behind us?
This is Monarda or bee balm. There's several types of bee balm in here, but this is obviously a tall one. And this is good. It does get powdery mildew. You can see it's on the leaves. So, but it doesn't kill it. So if you can handle that, you know, I think it's just part of nature. So it's fine. It has a beautiful smell. The hummingbirds were on it this morning, so it's a good one to have.
Okay.
And this is more Monarda. This is Monarda too. This is usually buzzing away with the bees. It's a cultivar called Sweet Petite Delight, and a lot of people wanted to know what kind this was. It won't get any taller than this. Okay. And if you deadhead it, you will get more blooms. However, some people say don't deadhead, leave the seeds for the goldfinches. But you know, there's enough of it here that I feel like I can deadhead some of it and leave some of it. So okay. I like the kind of little, not super neat look. So that's what I like.
What strikes me about this one, the Monarda, too, is that I could see being nice around like a mailbox or a lamppost where you don't want it to get too tall, but you're still putting native plants in and you're getting that pop of color.
Right, yes. This is more mountain mint. This is a native rose, which I love these native roses. This one is Rosa Carolina, and it just keeps blooming. It just keeps, and you can pluck off the dead ones if you want, but if you don't have time to deadhead, you don't need to do that either. Okay. And those will get pretty, hopefully pretty big, and you know, fill out a little bit more. This is just, I planted this spring, so it's a young one. Over here is giant hyssop. Well, this is actually Culver's root. These white ones will get really big white spires, but the purple is called, I think it's Agastache or Agastache, and it's giant hyssop. And this has a sort of like an anise smell, anisette. And this is also another pollinator magnet. The bees are really happy. And this stays in bloom a long time. It's been blooming for about 2 weeks. Okay. And it'll last throughout the summer into the fall. And it's pretty, you can tell it's pretty happy, I guess. Yeah. These orange milkweeds I didn't plant these. I sprinkled seed in the fall. And these are all just from seeds from other little plants I had. Okay. So they're really pretty prolific. Bumblebees are loving that as well. I know. And it's fun also to come out here, like every day. You find something new. Like I like finding those caterpillars over there before, and it's always just fun to see what's happening. You don't need to like go out on a nature walk. You can just go into your own garden. Right. So that's kind of cool. I try to have something for every, you know, as much of the season as possible. So starting really early in March, get some things that the early pollinators can use, and then, you know, all through the summer, and then into, you know, even late November, there will be pollinators getting ready to pack it in, but they need something to fuel their journey. So okay. This is more milkweed. This is Asclepias Incarnata, but it's like a cultivar called Ice Ballet, I think. And I don't see a lot of monarchs on this one, but I don't know. A popular one over here is Joe Pye weed. That'll bloom in about it's just starting now. That you'll see on like roadsides. It's a pretty hardy plant. That's another one that the deer got to this one, but it's recovering. They don't kill them, but yeah. And then this is a massive goldenrod. It's called Fireworks. It's a really popular cultivar, and it's called Fireworks because it has like golden, it'll look like trailing fireworks, the golden flowers coming off of it.
Okay.
So, and this will fill out too. So there's some blueberries in the back there.
So you get some snacks while you're at it.
Yeah, it's good to have a water feature. This is one I made. It's just a rock that I found and it's on a milk crate in a galvanized pot. I found the plant online, and it's good for migratory birds because they can hear the water when they come in.
Okay.
And so they can find a water source. We forget that sometimes that birds need the water just as much as they need the food. So I see a lot of orioles right now and bluebirds, so getting a whole host of different birds.
Okay.
And then I've just got some new things coming in. I think this is wild petunia.
And on the water, that's
Yep.
and that's better than your traditional bird bath, right? Because it's not stagnant water;
Right.
it's moving.
Yeah, and I like the sound of it.
Okay.
I do have just a granite bird bath over there, and that's, I just change it from time to time. So
Okay.
the prickly pear right there, that's kind of a fun one. That's a cactus that is native to our area.
Okay.
And the rabbits like it, so I keep it covered usually. But, this is a high bush cranberry. It's a viburnum, and viburnum there's a lot of different viburnums that are native to our area. And this is not the cranberries like that you see from the bogs, but it's a different type of cranberry.
Okay.
But the birds will like those. This is something that bloomed earlier. This is false indigo. It's got a beautiful yellow flower.
Okay.
So, yeah. And I've got some people sometimes ask me what the stumps are for. I've got 3 of them, and it's good to have habitat. So the birds will use it to bury things in over the winter, and various insects will lay eggs in it. And speaking of that, I don't rake any leaves. If you do this, you don't have to worry about raking. You can just leave the leaves. And I have noticed that I have a ton of fireflies this summer at night that I don't remember seeing before. And fireflies will overwinter under the leaves. So if you rake them up, you're not going to have the fireflies and the other things that overwinter. Some butterflies overwinter under the leaves. So leave your leaves.
All right. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right.
So what's some advice that you'd have for somebody that sees this and is kind of wondering, I'm not going to have time, or it seems like a lot of work? What's your advice to them?
Call me. It's not as much work as it seems. It's a lot less work than having a perfectly mowed lawn. I rarely water unless we go through a severe drought. Okay. And once you plant it, they'll just keep coming back every year. And you don't, like I said, you don't have to deadhead anything. It's really not that much work. I think the way I did it was I looked at a lot of different pictures of gardens and found the ones that appealed to me, and then I sketched it out with colored pencils, and went with colors instead of plants, because I didn't at the time know much about the plants at all. So everyone should have, there's some basics, like I think everyone should have milkweed, just because of the monarch butterflies. But milkweed, asters are a staple of a pollinator garden, and the bee balm. But and more and more nurseries are selling native plants these days. There's Nature Works in Northford is great. Agway is starting to sell a lot of native plants, so I'll look for the label that says native plants. So, all right,
and just a reminder to the viewers that we are in southern Connecticut, so these plants that you're seeing are all native to southern Connecticut. If you are watching in a different area, look up what's native to your specific area. Thank you so much for showing us your garden. This is wonderful. Hopefully the viewers have learned a little more about pollinator gardens and how little work it actually takes once they're set up. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that will help our viewers learn a little bit more about what they can do to maybe reduce the amount of and I'll use the term useless, grass. All they do is it's green and you mow it. But even just looking at some of the other things that can happen naturally within grass, like clover, I know my yard has a lot of clover, the little white flowers. The bumblebees love it, and I try to let it go to flower and let the grass get a little taller before I mow it, give them a chance to kind of grab some of that pollen. But so yeah, thank you so much for showing us your garden.
Thanks very much.
And let's go check out a couple more gardens. All right, so we're now in Branford. This is another pollinator garden, and I'm here with Donna. She is the keeper of this, and I'll let Donna talk a little bit about kind of what inspired this. And so I guess that would be the first question: is what got you started in the concept of, hey, I want to do a garden that's just natural with all natives? What kind of brought that about?
Well, it was the plight of the monarch butterflies.
Okay.
Their only food source is the milkweed plant, and it's been looked at as a weed plant, and a lot of people cut them down and don't want them in their yards or in the landscape, no matter where that is, agriculture or whatever. So when the monarchs come in, there's no place for them to lay their eggs.
Okay.
And I was really upset over that, so I wanted to have a garden that incorporated native plants. And then, of course, learning about pesticides and whatnot, and that's killing off our pollinators. So I wanted a garden full of native plants that would help those pollinators, and especially the monarchs.
Okay.
And as they say, if you plant it, they will come. And here's the evidence. This is a young monarch caterpillar here feeding on the milkweed. So, hopefully, if the predators don't get it, it will grow up and become another butterfly. So, it's just so important to try to help our pollinators, because, even in the long run, it hurts us. Pollinators are the major thing that pollinates our food plants.
Right.
If we don't have our pollinators even in our agriculture settings, we're not going to have food. Plain and simple, because you're not going to be out there with a paintbrush pollinating every plant to feed thousands of people.
So basically the cycle is no what we consider weeds, no pollinators. No pollinators means no food, which means we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Very simple logic if you think about it.
Everything is connected.
Right.
So this was my chance to give something back that we've taken away.
Okay.
So this is sort of like a meadowy version of a pollinator garden. This is not all nice and manicured.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't start out that way. My intention was to have something a little bit more manicured, but just seeing it, this is the 5th year, I believe, I've had this going.
Okay.
And it's just kind of taken on a life of its own, and
basically how it would happen
like in nature
without human intervention, because I'm assuming there's been no fertilizing, no weeding.
Nope.
It's just this is nature doing its thing.
And I don't need to really do a lot of watering either, because that's the other nice thing of native plants is they're used to what's going on in your native habitat. So they are doing their thing, but again, they're providing food for our pollinators that we're losing a lot of.
Okay.
The other nice thing too is, being this is along the street, a lot of these plants have gotten quite tall, but when you're on the other side of this, it's like a natural barrier, which is kind of cool. Because
so instead of planting things like arborvitaes that you have to worry about, they're expensive, you have to manicure them, this is a natural privacy fence. Okay.
And it provides a lot of food for the birds that come in. Seeds in the wintertime. A lot of these plants will go to seed that the birds will snack on all winter long.
Okay.
So it's a win-win no matter what. And then, of course, the pretty flowers.
Right.
All right, so this is common milkweed, and I apologize, I don't have the Latin names. This is going to seed. All of these here are going to form pods of seeds, and the monarchs will actually lay eggs on them, and the caterpillars will eat them. I do have some hosta in here, and hosta is not native to our area, but I like to sometimes have some non-native things in there, and there's nothing wrong with having some non-natives, and hummingbirds like them, the bees like them. So black-eyed Susan,
Are those native?
Yes, they are a native. And a lot of butterflies will use those too. Actually, there's a few bees that are in little wasps that you will see. Like here's a little teeny guy.
Oh, yeah.
Little teeny guys. Sometimes you overlook those little things, and they are just as important.
No matter how small they are, they're still
They're
pollinating
pollinators.
those plants.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that are not ready to bloom yet, but they are beginning to. This is one of the species of goldenrod.
Okay.
Very much a native, very good plant to have, especially later in the season. I actually am not sure what this is. I think this might be one of the fleabanes. Again, things sometimes grow in here, and I'm not sure what they are, so I wait for them to bloom.
Okay.
And if it's a yay or an nay, I'll make a decision at that point.
Gotcha. Okay.
That one there is sweet pepper bush. There are two versions of that. There's a white one, and I have the pink. I like color. I'm not a white person. Native shrub. Gets to be about 5 feet tall. Nice blooms. Again, another nice plant for pollinators.
Okay. These look like these are done
Yes.
flowering.
This is not a native. This is a spirea, but one of those that I've incorporated, and I'm going to let her be.
Okay.
Trim her back a bit.
Looks like quite a few flowers on it, so
Yes.
I'm assuming it is another big popular pollinator
Yeah.
stop.
Yep.
Okay.
This is something I did not plant. I'm not sure where this came from.
Okay.
It is a blackberry bush.
Okay.
But again, sometimes things come in, and I'm happy to have them.
Yep.
The catbirds have been feasting on the ripe fruits. Sometimes the squirrels will come in and feed on them.
Okay. So that one looks like it's ready down there.
Yeah.
You said the red ones are not good for human consumption.
Not yet. And wait for them to ripen up.
Okay.
This here is a native plant. Another thing I did not plant. It just grows naturally in this particular habitat. This is a jewelweed.
Okay.
Hummingbirds love this plant.
Yeah, it looks like it's a very tubular flower
Yes.
for a hummingbird beak.
Yep. Hummingbirds love it. This is actually one of those plants that's kind of nice to have in our area too, because with a lot of poison ivy, you can take the stems of these and crack them open. There's a sap inside them, and you can put that on if you have poison ivy, and it helps relieve the itch. Okay, so this is native wild bergamot, one of the bee balms, the native version. As you can see, there's quite a few little butterflies and bees. This is a big draw. Hummingbirds, again, love this one.
Okay. Now these guys here, these are...
And that's Echinacea. There are quite a few different cultivars of Echinacea. I prefer to stick to the native one. They're breeding them to be yellow and all different colors, and the jury's kind of out on whether or not they're beneficial for pollinators, so I tend to stick with just the purple.
Okay. Now, Echinacea sounds familiar. Is that that's an herb, right? Is that an herb that gets put into pill form that people take?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, there is some medicinal value to it.
Okay. And what these red ones right here?
This is bee balm, Monarda.
Okay.
These have about gone by, but this has been like the biggest hummingbird draw I've had in the garden.
Okay.
Hummingbirds absolutely love this one.
How about those tall ones there?
The tall ones there are cut leaf coneflower.
Okay.
It's a native sunflower.
And that's looking like that's probably about 7 feet tall, maybe?
Probably around that, yeah. The beetles have done some damage to it, but overall, I mean, I love it. And the goldfinches will feast on those seeds at the end of the year. And we do have a monarch here that is laying eggs.
Oh, look at that. Again, on the milkweed.
On milkweed. And again, it's their only food source.
Okay.
So like I said, if you plant it, they will come.
All right. And what do you got here, these boxes?
These are bee boxes. These two, as you can see, some of the holes are filled in. There were some mason bees that were nesting in there. Some of them are closed up. So the adult would have laid eggs in there and then filled it with pollen, I believe they use as a food source.
Okay.
And the larva will grow up in there and then hatch its way out.
Okay. And then these little slots.
This one here is a butterfly house. This is
Okay.
a gift from my friend Brenda to add into the landscape.
Right.
The butterflies will go into the slots to rest. There's some little twigs in there for them to rest on. Just get them out of the elements.
So now how about these white ones?
All right,
Here?
these ones here, this is mountain mint.
Okay.
This one is a huge draw. You can see this is absolutely loaded with insects. And again, seeds in the wintertime will feed birds.
Okay. Now, are most of these they're naturally reoccurring, so either they reseed themselves naturally or they're perennial?
Perennial, yes.
Okay.
I like to do perennial, but I will mix in some annuals
Okay.
here and there. There's another Echinacea.
Okay.
Planted this here.
All right. And then how about these guys here?
And then this one here this is again it's a native sunflower. It's Helianthus. This is actually a gift from a friend of mine that was thinning her garden.
Mm-hmm. Is this the aster?
No, not an aster. This is a sunflower. This will get a lot of nice 2 to 3 inch diameter yellow flowers.
Okay. This whole cluster is the sunflowers?
Yeah, big draw for pollinators.
Okay.
This one here, when we had the pollinator garden, this was the one everybody wanted to see. This is common boneset. This will get some clustered white flowers. You can see there's some starting to bloom at the top, and you can see an insect there.
Yep.
Looks like maybe one of the...
Japanese beetle.
Yeah, possible.
Those are
not
not
a friend.
native.
Not a friend.
Yep. I've heard too that you actually don't want to put the Japanese beetle traps out because they actually encourage them to come to your property.
Correct.
What we need to do is find something that can be a natural predator to them.
Yeah, because actually not too many birds will even eat them. So that's why introducing non-native things is not a good thing.
Okay.
The tall guys in the back is, I believe, my ironweed. I did do a prune on them earlier in the year, and I didn't nip all of them, so you can see it does get quite tall, but that'll mask some nice purple flowers. Again, later in the season, good thing to have later in the year.
So when you say you nip them, is that if you want to control their height but still let them flower, you can cut them down a little bit?
Yeah, like in
water them?
June, do like cut them down about halfway.
Okay.
And then they'll bush out a little bit more, and you can have more blooms on them. I tend to just like letting things go. If that's what nature intended, that's what I let them do.
Gotcha. And what's next?
All right, so the last thing I have in here, well, I have kind of a combo thing. I have the jewelweed is intermixed with, these are New England asters that I did do a hard prune on.
Okay.
So after the jewelweed does its thing and finishes blooming, I'm going to pull those out, and then that'll isolate the New England aster for the butterflies. Again, good plant to have for later in the season.
Okay.
Monarchs, one year I had 8 monarchs at one time on the blooms before they headed south.
Okay. And that's a food source.
Yes.
Not for eggs. But
Not
it's
for
a food
eggs.
source.
Food source, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So when you have that last generation of monarchs, they are usually a little bit bigger in order to make that migration down to Mexico, South America.
Okay. All right, well, that was pretty impressive. It's quite a bit here, and this is actually decent size when you think about it. This was probably, what a good 20 feet that way and 20 feet that way.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive, and it's almost no maintenance, which is nice. What would you consider as some advice to somebody who is considering doing this and kind of replacing some of their lawn, which is high maintenance and pretty much useless? What would you consider as advice for somebody to kind of get started?
Research your area, look into botanical websites that cater to native plants in your area. Okay. That's how I got started, and I hooked up with one of the local Audubon chapters that helped direct me as well as to plants.
Okay, so which species, and that way if you want to put some arrangement in of like colors and time, right? You said times too, right? Because you want some early bloomers, some mid bloomers, some late bloomers, so that way you always have that pop of color.
Right.
And sounds like too, like with the asters, you said it's a late bloomer, which is a food source for pre-migratory monarchs.
One of the things I'm focused on is early bloomers. I don't have very many early bloomers, so that's my goal, is to try to work on getting some early bloomers.
Okay. Any, can you think of any off the top of your head, what would be a good early bloomer?
Well, I do have, which is buried in here now, actually there are some seed pods here. This is wild indigo.
Okay.
And then I have woodland phlox, which are 2 early bloomers, but I'd like to get a little bit more. They're both in the purple color, but if I can find something else that's...
Okay, like some reds, yellows, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
So something that'll be attractive. And
all right, great. All right, well, thank you so much for showing us your garden. This is awesome. What's that? Oh, is that a osprey?
So we're just taking note of an osprey flying over with a stick.
Somebody's
heading to his nest.
So.
Cool.
All right, well, very cool. Thank you so much. And so hopefully this has given you some ideas, some inspiration as to what you can do to kind of reduce your, the amount of acreage that you have for lawns, which, I don't know how lawns got started. That's another thing that you can probably Google, but we've actually shown that there's really not a lot of benefit to a lawn because it's a lot of maintenance and, what's the point of it? Because the pollinators don't use it. So
I think it had something to do with English kings.
Oh, okay.
And royalty and trying to look like you're rich.
Okay.
The more lawn you had, the richer you were.
Let's plant some green carpet.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. So yeah, I personally, I kind of like the natural flowers just because it's amazing to see, and it's entertainment too because you see all of the wildlife that is visiting it. Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah. I'll park a chair out here and I just spend hours just watching what's visiting.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Oh, well, Donna, thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you got a lot out of this. I'll have some links following up with some contacts that you can research to get your own pollinator garden started. So thank you so much for watching.